They say the West was a place of law and order, that when the railroads came and the towns rose from the dust, justice followed right behind. But a man who lived through those times will tell you something different. He'll tell you that the law wasn't a noble ideal. It was just a gun in another man's hand. The sun hangs low over Fort Harmony, painting the dusty street in shades of rust and gold. The air is thick with the scent of whiskey, sweat, and cheap tobacco. At the center of it all are two men, brothers by blood, but strangers in their beliefs. Jed Cross, a man built from quiet strength and unwavering principle, stares down at a wanted poster pinned to a wooden post. He studies the name Orrin Wells, former lawyer, now a fugitive. Wanted for murder. Jed's younger brother, Caleb, leans against a water trough, whittling a piece of wood into a crude animal figure. He grins, a flash of white in the shadow of his hat. $50, Jed. A man can get a new saddle for that, maybe a decent meal that ain't full of sand. Jed doesn't look up. This ain't about money, Caleb. A man's dead. A man who was supposed to uphold the law. Caleb scoffs, tossing the wood into the dust. The law? You're still clinging to that, Jed? Out here, the law is just a piece of paper. People listen to the crack of a whip and the bang of a gun. That's the only language they understand. Jed finally turns, his eyes hard and cold. Some of us still believe in more than just violence. Believe all you want, Caleb says, pushing off the trough. Just don't let it get us killed. They follow a blood trail leading out of town, a common sight on the dusty roads. But as they track it deeper into the desolate canyonlands, Jed notices something odd. The boot prints are small, worn down. They don't match the clean, new boots of a lawyer. And the blood, it's not from a man, but from an animal. A wild boar, perhaps. Jed stops dead in his tracks, his hand on his rifle. Caleb, this ain't right. The trail is a fake. Something's wrong here. Wells didn't run. He was set up. The simple bounty hunt has just become a dangerous, personal quest for the truth, and Jed, a man of law, is about to discover that his ideals might just be his downfall. The trail of fake blood led them deeper into the desolate canyonlands, the air growing thinner, the silence heavier. The sun beat down on a landscape of cracked earth and sun-bleached rock. It was a place where things went to be forgotten. They came upon a single, dilapidated farmhouse, its windows like empty, staring eyes. Caleb gestured to the house, his hand already on his pistol. Well, there it is. The end of the road. Let's go get our bounty. Jed held up a hand, stopping his brother cold. Hold on. Something isn't right. He knelt and examined the ground. He found no fresh footprints leading to or from the house, only old, faded tracks from a horse that hadn't been ridden in months. He then noticed a small hand-carved piece of wood next to a dried-out well, a tiny, perfect horse. It was the same kind of carving Caleb had been making moments ago. Jed felt a cold wave of suspicion. He walked around to the back of the house, where the brush was overgrown and tangled. There, half hidden by a broken wagon wheel, was a leather satchel. It was Orrin Wells's. Inside, Jed found no gold, no supplies for a long journey. Only a series of old maps, crisscrossed with lines, and a handful of crumpled, yellowing letters. He wasn't running, Jed said, his voice a low whisper. He was looking for something. Caleb sighed, impatient. He's just trying to cover his tracks, Jed. Let's move on. We're wasting time. But Jed's discovery had planted a seed of doubt that Caleb couldn't dismiss. The silence that followed was broken by a sudden rustling in the bushes. Both men drew their guns, their eyes scanning the treeline. An old man emerged, hunched over a cane, his face a road map of wrinkles and sun damage. He wore the tattered remnants of a bounty hunter's coat. "You boys are a long way from home," he said, his voice like rust on iron. "This land's got a nasty habit of swallowing up good men." The old man introduced himself as Silas. Jed explained their mission, and Silas's eyes, ancient and knowing, looked from Jed to the satchel. "What's huh? I knew a man like him once. A good man. Too good for this world. Got tangled up in a web of lies so deep, nobody could pull him out." He spoke of a case years ago, about a stolen fortune and a town that burned to the ground. A town like the one they were tracking. "The law couldn't touch him back then," Silas rasped. "The men who held the law, they were the ones who took it all. And the lawmen who tried to stop them, well, his body was never found." He looked at Jed with a grave expression. "History likes to repeat itself out here, son. Be careful you don't end up on the wrong side of it." The warning hung in the air, heavy and unsettling. Jed's faith in the law, once an ironclad fortress, felt a sudden tremor. He had always believed in the system, in the black and white of right and wrong. But Silas's words painted a world of gray, where the badge was just a shield for corruption. They left Silas and followed the maps found in the satchel, which led them to a ghost town. It was nothing more than a few rotting shacks and a skeletal saloon. Inside a small office, they found a leather-bound journal. Jed opened it, his fingers tracing the worn, careful script. It was Orrin Welles's final testimony. "I was a fool to believe in a perfect justice. The law is not a shield for the people. It is a weapon for those who control it. The men I prosecuted were only foot soldiers. The real monster wears a badge, not a bandana. He is the former sheriff of this very town, a man named Denton, now an influential figure in Fort Harmony. He runs a gang that is still active, and he's been systematically silencing anyone who gets in his way, starting with the town's true heroes." Jed felt the blood drain from his face. The man they were hunting was not a killer. He was a lawman himself, trying to expose the very system Jed believed in. The journal detailed Denton's crimes, a series of robberies, a mass murder, and the framing of innocent men. It laid out a path of corruption that led straight back to their own town. Caleb paced the floor, agitated. "So what? It's just a dead man's words. Nobody will believe it. They'll just want us to bring in the bounty and be done with it." "This isn't just words," Jed retorted, his voice rising. "It's the truth. The real killer is still out there, hiding behind a badge, and he's got Orrin's blood on his hands. And you think they're going to thank you for bringing them a dead man's story and a bag of old papers?" Caleb shot back, his frustration boiling over. "They'll tell you to mind your own business and get out. Maybe they'll even tell you to get lost for good. Let's just drop this, Jed. The reward is what matters, not some dead lawyer's fight." But Jed's resolve had hardened. He would not give up. He looked at Caleb, and in that moment, the brothers were worlds apart. One driven by a righteous cause, the other by pragmatic survival. The journal revealed the location of Denton's hideout, a remote canyon known as Rattlesnake Gulch. Jed and Caleb rode hard through the night, their horses' hooves a relentless rhythm against the rocky ground. They found the canyon at dawn. Denton and his gang were gathered around a campfire, their faces hardened by years of lawlessness. Jed and Caleb dismounted and took cover behind a rocky outcrop. "There he is," Jed whispered, pointing out Denton. "Get ready, Caleb." The gunfight was fast and brutal. Jed, methodical and precise, took out two of the gang members with clean shots. Caleb, wild and unrestrained, used his speed and agility to flank the others. They worked as a well-oiled machine, each brother's unique approach complementing the other. Within minutes, it was over. Denton was the last one standing, his gun arm wounded. Jed had him pinned, his rifle aimed squarely at his chest. "It's over, Denton. You're coming with us." Caleb stepped forward, his pistol still smoking. He looked at Jed, his eyes full of a dark fire. "Jed, don't be a fool. We can end this right here. No trial, no trouble. Just us and the reward." Jed stood his ground. "No. The law will have its say." Denton let out a bitter laugh. He pulled a small pouch from his coat and tossed it into the dust. It landed with a soft thud. The coins inside clinked. "It's done, Jed. Orrin is dead. His body is buried beneath the old saloon in the ghost town. He died for his ideals, and look what it got him." Denton's voice dripped with poison. "You think you're going to be any different? You've got two choices. You take the money, forget everything you've seen, and walk away. Or you try to be a hero, and you end up just like him." Jed stared at the pouch of money, then at Denton. His principles, once so clear, were now tangled in a knot of doubt. He had pursued justice, only to find that it came with a price he may not be willing to pay. Jed looked from the pouch of money to Denton, then back to Caleb. His brother's face was a mask of hard-won pragmatism. He knew what Caleb was thinking: take the money, disappear, and live to fight another day. But Jed's gaze settled on the journal in his hand, the final testament of a good man who had sacrificed everything for the truth. He wasn't going to let that sacrifice be in vain. Jed pushed the pouch away with the tip of his boot. "We're not like you," he said, his voice firm and steady. "We're bringing you in." Denton's face twisted with rage. "You're fools. The world doesn't want heroes. They want what's easy." Caleb drew his pistol and aimed it at Denton, not at his chest, but at his kneecap. A single, sharp crack of the gun echoed through the canyon. Denton screamed, collapsing to the ground. Caleb then looked at his brother, a grim smile on his face. "The law can have him, Jed. We're not getting paid for this anyway." They bound Denton and delivered him to the local sheriff, a man who had worked with Denton for years. Jed presented the journal, a full confession, and an eyewitness account from Caleb. The sheriff read the journal slowly, his face growing paler with each page. When he finished, he didn't look at the evidence. He looked at Jed and Caleb. He shook his head. "I'm sorry, boys. This is all very compelling, but it's just a dead man's words. Denton here is a pillar of this community. A hero. I can't arrest a hero on a piece of paper." The sheriff, who was in Denton's pocket, threw the journal into the fire. The paper curled, blackened, and turned to ash. Jed stood there, a profound emptiness spreading through him as he watched the truth disintegrate into nothing. Denton was released. Jed was arrested and charged with assault. The system Jed believed in had turned against him. They won the fight in the canyon, but they had lost the war for justice. Caleb used every connection he had, calling in every favor owed to him, to get Jed out of jail before the powerful forces could dispose of him for good. The final scene shows Jed and Caleb riding away from Fort Harmony. Jed's face is different now. The unwavering conviction is gone, replaced by a deep, weary disillusionment. He had seen the truth, and the truth was that the law was a lie. Caleb looked at him, his voice softer than it had ever been. He pulled a second pistol from his holster, his own, a well-used Colt Peacemaker, and handed it to his brother. "Jed," he said, "I always told you, the law is just a gun in another man's hand. From now on, you're that man.